Hello everyone, welcome back to Green Chat, where today we're going to take a closer look at an upcoming MMO, Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. My name is Cleeze, and let's get started. Alright, welcome back everybody. This is Green Chat, a place where you guys can ask me questions and I can give you my opinion and hopefully formulate your own on the upcoming MMO, Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. Sorry for my recent absences, if you guys even care. But yeah, I'm working on it. Busy work, busy life, man. I'm sure every YouTuber in the world has said that. So apologies. But anyway, working on it. We'll see how it goes. Gonna try to keep it up and keep it real. If any hurricanes come, yikes. So anyways, let's move on. So today we got some questions from you guys. Also have a couple of point of interest I was going to cover. Super simple stuff. Other than that, let's roll into the content of That Is Which Green Chat is. So, further ado, let's rock and roll. All right, to get this kick in, I thought it might be kind of interesting if in the background I usually show some streams of Pantheon from the development streams. What I'm going to do is play one of their first streams that came out like around 2016, 2015, maybe 2016. I'm going to have it looping in the background and then kind of cut over to one that just came out recently to kind of give you guys a difference of how it looks. I just did it the other day. It looks crazy. Figured I'd just show it to you and you'd be like, whoa, well, that's nuts, man. But anyways, hope you enjoy that. It's pretty nifty gifty. Some other point of interest I want to cover really quick before we kick into your guys' questions or comments. Recently, Brad McQuaid, Japa, did a little, I think it's MMO Gaming or Game Space, little talk show. They did a little stream with those guys on Twitch, and I was checking it out. Thought it was pretty good. Interesting thing that Brad McQuaid said is maybe they let these things slip. I'm not sure if it's intentional or not, but what was pretty nifty about what he said is we're about halfway through pre-alpha. So you can do the math there. Pre-alpha, I think, came out around November. No, November was PAX. I don't know exactly the math, but you can do the math. Basically, we're halfway through pre-alpha, and the way phasing works is you go from pre-alpha to alpha to beta. So you alpha folks out there, I'm also an alpha folk, get excited because we're getting pretty close. I mean, it's already been halfway through the phase, and that went by pretty quick. Another thing to bring up that was pretty interesting from that stream would be they were talking about the dynamic encounters and how they would affect quests and completing quests and stuff like that. So if you guys remember back to EQ1, everybody pretty much statically tracked out. I mean, some mobs are random, they'd spawn, but you can kind of program the way you complete quests. Like, oh, okay, he's not here today, so he's going to pop in like 24 hours, or you could ask for pop times. This might not make sense to you if you're never played EverQuest. Basically, quest mobs sometimes were very difficult to find or get to spawn. You had to do a sequence of events to cause them to spawn, and that was sometimes difficult, but knowing what to exactly do made it much easier. Now with Pantheon Rise of the Fallen, they've mentioned they're going to make these type of things dynamic. What that means is there could be multiple ways to spawn one mob in a dynamic way, which will make quests much more interesting and potentially much more you're living through it versus looking it up online, because you might not be able to easily do that. People might not be able to easily compile what do you call it, guides for these things, because there is like 6 different ways to do it, and it takes forever to discover these for at least one person, because it might take a collaboration of people to come together to even get the full scope of what a quest actually is or entails. So that was interesting as far as dynamic encounters goes. It also plays into quests and stuff like that, not just, hey, you kill this camp and then some other camp goes like, why is this camp getting slaughtered? Send a bunch of dudes, man, back them up. And you're like, whoa, epic war. But anyway, yeah, I thought that was really neat. So anyways, I'll leave the links for that interview in my description, and we'll move on to your guys' comments. All right, so first up, we have a question from Fragile. He actually has 3 comments here real quick. We'll get these done. Bam. So first one is, Pantheon might be making a mistake by not having advanced looting in the game. It's way outdated, he thinks, and it leads to camping or corpse camping and ninja looting. What do you think? This is one progressive feature that should make the cut in my mind. That's advanced looting system. The system that EQ uses is now kind of blah, but it works really well. Something like this would go a long ways. So I actually like bending down and getting the workout in the old knees. Hear that crack? And looting corpses. It's exciting, you know, when the guy dies in the anticipation of walking over and looting. There's that. It also is much more immersive. It's much less of like a, I don't know, like a Facebook game when something dies and a window pops up and it's like, hi, you're in the future, yet you're back not in the future, you're in the past, in a fantasy land of Terminus. Another thing too, in EverQuest, you kill a ton of dudes, and there's a lot of trivial loot that doesn't make any sense to have. Like the loot system is so clunky that it made sense for them to put that feature in the game to sort through the piles of junk you would get that were too heavy or useless for you. That's another thing too, is weight in this game is going to come back into play in a much more real way. So you're not going to be collecting a bunch of stuff. And they said they want loot to be very applicable to whatever you're doing. So you're not going to really be like, you know, I don't know, wasting your time with looting. It's just going to take a moment. Plus there's actually real med times here. So it's not going to be like, oh my gosh, I'm spending all my time looting. What am I doing? I think you're going to be spending very little time looting because how often you kill things. But anyway, so I like the old school way of looting. Now it's interesting, and it's kind of, who knows? But me personally, I like having to deal with my group, having to manage a way for us to handle the loot and do it that way, because that's the way you're going to probably have to do it, which I know Brad McQuaid has mentioned this as well, and Japa have mentioned that it's part of the social, it's part of the community. The loot is very important in these games. It's one of the sole drivers of you wanting to level up. It's for most people anyways, not everybody. But yeah, I like it the old way. You could like it the new way, or excuse me, you could like it the way that EQ does it. But personally, I like it the old way, where you bend down and you go through his pockets. Just feels right. So moving on. Next up, we have corpse runs. Corpse runs are bad. I believe just popping up with all your gear at biome location is bad as well. I think they need to go back to the drawing board a bit with death and getting your items. Sorry, let me rephrase. I think they need to go back to the drawing board a bit with death and getting your items. Oh, I see. Doing corpse runs. I am all for having a penalty, but spending hours just to have your items is way too old school EQ for me. What about you? So spending hours, depending on what I was doing and how risky I was doing it, and the payoff risk first reward thing, hours could make sense. That's, I think, a facet of this game that is just there. It's not like you're trying to get to the end of the tunnel really quick, or you're on some like you know, get to point A to point B as fast as possible. I think you're trying to enjoy the ride. And you need that factor in there. You need those corpse runs that will take you hours because you were going big. You were like, yo, let's jump off this cliff. Let's skip all these mobs and get over to that guy and kill him because he never pops, and he's popped right now. You know, that's just how it is. Now, in general, I don't think you're going to be, you know, like in EQ. I think they're going to have more bind locations in this game to make it much more convenient. But in EQ, it was, you would have, I know what you're saying. You'd be sitting there waiting for boats that took 40 minutes, and then you're waiting for this and waiting for that, and then you might die again. I mean, it's going to be risky, but it's not going to be, you're going to have a much more robust population here. Things are going to be camped. You're going to be able to bind closer, or you should at least have the forethought to do so. And I think those corpse runs should be timely if you were doing it to be a BA, man, you know, be an awesome dude. And that's just the risk versus reward. If you don't want that risk, don't take it, and you won't have to be dealing with those corpse runs. But I think there will be corpse runs, and they might take a while. Granted, you could probably pay some guy, hey, hook me up, man. Like when you get to like top level and stuff like that, when these corpse runs are going to take that long, like, you know, level 30, no way. Level 20, no way. I mean, even in Q, no way. You'd be like, you'd be relatively safe. You can get back to your body. These corpse runs that take a really long time is when you were really high level, really deep in a dungeon that was very difficult to get into. You need multiple buffs and, you know, different stuff like that to even get there. Those are the ones that take forever. And when you're doing that stuff, there's going to be other high level players in those areas. So I think that's just the way it's going to be when you're at that level. If there's 3-hour corpse runs for level 15s, I would then say, hey, yeah, maybe they are bad. That is when it would be bad. But anyway, that's that. So next up, you sense heading. Sense heading needs to not be a thing. It is archaic. By the way, this is all from Fragile. It is archaic to have to train a skill, especially since they announced there won't be any maps or map systems in the game. Things like that, where MMOs made great progression in. Things like this are where MMOs made great progression in the maps. And this is one direction we shouldn't go back in. What are your thoughts on sense heading being a skill to train up? What about maps? So anyways, community will 100% make maps. I mean, you can get, you'll probably be able to get some kind of interfaceable add-on that will I mean, guaranteed you probably will. That will track your coordinates, or at least get the, you know, you could send to like a textbook or do a combat check, or a, what do you call it? Capture to text type away in the game, and type location, which will send it. Like if you can't have an add-on in the game, you could send in your chords to a notepad or something like that, which will, you know, application could track, and then you could have like a contextual map on your second monitor, for instance. You know, and you can set up like a macro maybe that spams location in a window you can't see where it does that. So I think this is something for players who want it, who want this type of experience, and I think it should be in the game. It shouldn't default to it should default to what's the coolest thing, and then if you want to add on to that to not be that, for instance using maps, you can do that as a player. So yeah, I think select setting is good to be in the game. It's good. I mean, as far as leveling it up, it's a skill, so that's fine. But I don't have an issue with it, because if you don't like it, you can easily not deal with it by going to a third-party website and getting the maps and being like, hey, just go over here, guys. And they're like, no, my sense heading tells me to go this way. And you can be like, dude, get with the times, bro. You know, so that would be your moment. Other than that, I have no issue with it. I think I'm not going to be using maps, because why not? It will be silly. I will be a silly goose running around asking for directions, and people will be like, dude. But anyway, yeah, I kind of like sense heading, and I like that it's a skill, and it's easy enough to click that sucker to level it up. But yeah, let's move on. All right, next up we have a question from German Boy 00. German Boy 00. Nice. One question I'd like to have answered: if you have any info on the topic of music. In live streams, you don't hear much music, but I did a small research and ended up with their SoundCloud site. Been there also. It's nice. Site where they have 12 tracks, and out of those 12 I found 2 or 3 convincing and beautiful. You know, music is something very important to me. It always made me return to WoW. Sometimes I listen to some old zone tracks on YouTube and wallow in memories. I wish they'd hire those guys who made the music for WoW, since we all know their soundtrack and cinematics are unbeatable. I'd like to disagree, but hey, you know, they are excellent though. They are good. Their in-game music, you know, I'll get into that in a moment. Is it something I should worry about, or will there be any better music? Are there some capable guys working on it? So yes, there are some capable guys. Initially, Japa, I believe, was working on the music, and those 12 tracks were put out by him. Now, let's take a couple steps back here and talk about what music does for you and why it's so important. So, don't quote me, but so funny you bring this question up, because I was just listening to some podcasts while I was traveling to work, and you know, my buddies always get on my case for doing this, but I'm going to do it right here in Green Chat. I'm so sorry. So basically, there was this guy in there who's this dude, a psychologist dude, and they did all these studies. No big deal. No big deal, guys. But basically, when you play music, whatever you're doing when that music is playing, you associate feelings with it, and then you build those memories. And those music, or the music that you're listening to during that moment, really ties everything together and has a very strong influence on you emotionally and nostalgically and immersively in that environment. Music is super powerful. Now, what I think they did, this is just my opinion, I think they gave you a little taste of the music and then they stopped. And a couple of their live streams, they kind of hint at the music, or they want to show it to us, and it's kind of like bounced over. And I think they're trying to avoid that. Reason being, if they showed us all their music right off the Kit Kat, you know what I'm saying? It would kind of dampen it or make it less when you actually saw it in the game. The experience you'd run through with the music would not be as great, or maybe it'd be lame-o, tame-o, stramo, stinkers. And that's why I think they're doing that. Now, you don't need you just need somebody who really is passionate about it to really be into it. Also, I mean, they're building out more of the world as well. I'm kind of jumping all over here with the music stuff, and they are going to need that to really set the mood, be able to immerse themselves in the environment, and then start composing that music. Now, I'm pretty sure music is done towards the end. They do some here and there, but towards the end, the music will start coming together, because that's just what makes sense, because you want most of the environment constructed to even make it. And then cues and stuff like that. When you enter into this section, it's, you know, cue the music. But historically, in EverQuest especially, I'm not so sure about Vanguard, music was key. There was music everywhere, and it was very intricate. Like, you'd walk into a tavern, and different corners of the tavern, depending on what was going on, you'd have different music. You did in the city, just alleyways would have their own music. You'd have atmospheric music, ambient, stuff like that. And they really added to all of it. Unless you went to Lower Guck, and then you just hear weird frogs just kind of like, groaning and stuff. So there were some areas that didn't have music. But expect awesome music from Pantheon Rise of the Fallen. And I think they're intentionally holding back for the reasons stated earlier or aforementioned, because it makes sense to. When you hear this music, you want to be in the game, you want that rush, and you want that association. You want to engram that into your brain and have it be a part of you, just like all that music. Now, if you think back to memories, you can usually associate those with music, especially in video games, and they usually give you a mood or a tone or an emotional response. And that is created because of when you first heard it, what you were doing and what you associate with that music, just instead of like, oh, that's cool. Because sometimes, like, just hear me out, sometimes when you're playing certain games and you get engaged with the soundtrack and you're doing something that you feel is very epic, or you're pulling off some awesome move, or something crazy is going on, that you get this emotional high, it feels like this awesome experience, and you're like, oh my god, this is so cool, and then you think the music is freaking awesome, and then you go back and listen to it and you're like, this is okay. And just listening to it by itself is not nearly as epic versus whatever. And that's another thing as well. Not to say they're just going to have this dumbed down music and it's only epic because of the environment, but you kind of get where I'm going. Now, another thing I wanted to mention on music, which I think is, I know you mentioned that World of Warcraft has really outstanding music and stuff like that. They have really awesome cinematics of music. In their game, I thought it was kind of lackluster, English speaking. And one I really liked was Final Fantasy XIV. And I don't have anywhere else to really say this. I might say it on the forums or something like that, but I'm going to wait and see longer down development before I really start kind of, tussling in the bush about this one. But that game and the raid environments, like literally the music was so sick. I mean, if you go look it up, like the Crystal Labyrinth and stuff like that, when you were in there, it would be playing this awesome music, this awesome, like super, you'd be like, I don't even know how to describe it. It was so cool. And then when you started combat, it was the same music, but the tempo would change. And it would like roll through it. And in the moment, it was seamless. It was like playing the song, go into combat, go out of combat, still the same song, and it would just change the way it was playing it. I think that was super cool. And that might be something that Pantheon might consider for their like combat music, is instead of just having battle music, have the area's soundtrack, but changed, at least in certain areas, maybe in very difficult areas or very prestigious areas that are just hard to achieve or reach. Kind of have that little twist in there to make it that much cooler. Because I understand some areas might be like super haunted, stupid, not cool music, or not cool like, hey, this would be cool battle music if they turned up the tempo. But anyway, thought I'd throw that in there. And I'd also recommend checking out Final Fantasy's music, Final Fantasy XIV Online, which is the online MMO Final Fantasy. But anyway, yeah, I think they're intentionally holding back. They threw that stuff up on SoundCloud just for proof of concept, like, hey, this is some of the songs we've made. What do you think, guys? And you said 2 or 3 were convincingly and beautiful. And I think that's what they were trying to do, is just have a complete smorgasbord of a couple of songs to have us test out and see what we thought. And I thought they were cool too. So, hey, I think that's what they were doing. So let's move on, guys. Hopefully I answered your question. I would expect great music. I would expect great things from the Pantheon Visionary Realms team. So that's all we have today. That's the questions and comments from you guys. That was pretty quick. One thing I wanted to mention is the last video I did was Pantheon Rise of the Fallen versus Ashes of Creation. And I guess their project manager, or one of their project leads, no, project manager, one of the website guys, I guess, was fired or quit the job. I don't know. But the website has not been as up to date. And I intend to do maybe another versus later down the road when things get closer. I don't know, probably not, but I thought it was more appropriate. I'll leave it in the link down below, but I guess what they have is their Discord is a really good place for information, and they post a lot of stuff in there, and I should have been going there for their info. I guess their main team leads jump into Discord, have their own channels, and post their blogs and all this really stuff. Kind of gives me not the entire warm fuzzy, but hey, that's what they do. That's how they roll. Apparently it's awesome. You can get in there, even talk to them. I don't know, and it's totally open. I guess they're trying to be as transparent as possible. So I'll leave that as well in the comments. This is one time just for you guys, because I feel like it's only appropriate to do so. All right, guys, and that is that. Thank you for watching. I really enjoyed being able to share with you guys a little bit more about Pantheon and some random information, especially music. One thing I wanted to bring up or just mention is, you can't see it right here, but this is a special item that Pantheon Radio sent me, and I just want to say, hey, thanks guys. I'm actually making a really, really goofy commercial involving that mug. That's why I'm not really highlighting it right now. But coffee happens to be my favorite thing. And if you guys want, you could support them by checking out Pantheon Radio. I went over there and recently checked it. They play some pretty rad songs. You know, you can play it while you're, or excuse me, you can listen to it in the background while you're playing some games and stuff like that. No big deal. They also have some of the YouTubers and content creators kind of cycle through. And I'm sure you guys are familiar. But anyways, I figured I'd just do that. But yeah, I just wanted to say thanks for the mug. I really appreciate it. I love me some mugs. And I jam with this mug. And it's from like Europe. It's super cool. It's the radness. So yeah, thanks Pantheon Radio. I love you, man. Or gentlemen, or men and women. I don't know how big your team is or what you do. Sounds awesome though. Yeah, so let's conclude. So if you guys, hey, if you enjoyed what you watched or enjoyed what you saw, please consider liking and subscribing to get any notifications for future uploads I do. If you have any questions or comments for me, please leave them in the comments below, and I'll get to them. And you know, and I enjoy reading them, and I appreciate them. Other than that, guys, again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you again really soon.